Hi, welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about a brand new poetry collection called Waiting for Frank Ocean in Cairo by Hazem Fahmy. The book is published by Half Mystic Press, and at the time of filming this, it's available for pre-order, so I'm going to put the link in the description below, and I do recommend you buy this, as I'll discuss throughout the video. First off, I'll say that I felt like this collection was really cohesive, which is something that I look for in poetry and something I found really impressive. I was surprised to learn that it was written over the course of 5 years. It really didn't feel like that to me. So just speaking as a poet who's currently working on a full-length collection, I recently had to take a poem out, or decided reluctantly to take a poem out of the collection, not because it wasn't good, but just because it was too old. The style doesn't really fit with the things I've been writing recently. So anyway, you probably don't want to hear about all that, but I just think that the cohesion was really impressive to me. I would also say I feel like this collection might appeal to people who don't usually read poetry. Now, in the past, I have kind of maybe taken some jabs at collections that I felt like or written primarily for an audience of non-poetry readers. I'm not saying it's like that. This collection is extremely skillful and intentional, and it's doing, a lot of poetic things. I just think that on the syntax level, it's pretty straightforward, and on the subject level, it's pretty narrative and personal. It's not super surreal. It's very accessible. So if you like poetry, there will be things to really dissect, but if you don't like poetry, I still think it would be very enjoyable, or it could be a good place to start if you're not sure how you feel about poetry. So Frank Ocean's music is a thread that holds the collection together. There are 4 poems in the collection that are made up of lyrics from particular Frank Ocean songs, and much of the collection is about waiting for the album to come out, listening to the album. So obviously, if you're a reader of poetry and a Frank Ocean fan, I would definitely recommend this collection. And if you're not, I would recommend listening to the songs that are referenced as you read it, because I think it just gives like a fuller experience. And I would definitely recommend this collection to anyone who feels like they have a strong connection to more than one place or more than one culture, because much of the collection explores that kind of push-pull. And specifically, if you can read Arabic, there are some words that I believe are in Arabic, so it'll be that much more powerful for you. Here's a quote that I'd like to read on that kind of theme. "There is always a there and a here, and I suppose sometimes I should choose which helps me breathe easier." I thought that was really nice. So to me, this collection also had a deeply nostalgic feel to it, and I was just having a conversation the other day with some poets about how hard it can be to write nostalgia well, and I think this poet really does that. So here's some passages that felt kind of nostalgic to me. "From the airport, all worlds seem possible, one's lost and forgotten." And from a different poem, "It's been 5 years, but the boy still shines when he smiles. I stare at his jaw as we shiver on the rooftop of a rundown hotel, waiting for the waiter to bring his beer." So see how it's kind of like accessible? I mean, that was just one stanza, but I really, really do think that this would appeal to people who maybe find poetry to be too difficult or confusing, because it's very straightforward. It's very readable. And if you do enjoy reading poetry because you like to kind of step into someone else's introspection, someone else's subjective experience with their memories and their desires and longings, this is definitely a collection that will provide that experience for you. It really made me think about why I read poetry and how emotions like nostalgia can feel, and longing and desire can feel so nice to read when they're not yours. Like, those are all very like bittersweet, if not just bitter emotions, and I feel like reading it in the form of a poem from someone else's life kind of cuts the bitterness and just makes it more pleasant to kind of dive into those emotions, if that makes any sense at all. I am not good at talking about poetry. Why do I have a poetry YouTube channel? It is so hard to talk about poetry that's good. There's just like a kind of a magic to it. It's very hard for me to articulate. I feel like the style in this collection is distinct and kind of subtle. It's like the emotions sometimes hit me before the words. Again, if that makes like any sense at all. Here's a passage from a poem called "All Summer Long I Waited for Frank." "I think I waited so long for Frank because I came out of Ramadan with tired ears. Then again, Frank was instinct, as was waiting. What else was there to do as summer folded itself shut?" I love that. Folded itself shut. Like, you see what I mean? It's like crystal clear and poetic. It hits that Perfect little sweet spot for me. When I'm doing a review like this, I don't want to read too much of the collection because I want you to go read it, but I want to read at least one poem in full. I chose a poem called Night Anthem, not because I think it's the best poem in the collection. I think it's good. I don't think it stood out to me as actually like the best one. I just felt like it was very relatable, and I wanted to talk about that. So I'm going to read this one in full. Some nights I am seized with an almost uncontrollable desire to banish Frank from my library. I grow weary of passion. Some nights I lie awake in bed listening, knowing I have doomed myself to a restless sleep. In 10 years, I never hung a poster of Frank on my wall. The nights I need unreachable men to croon me to sleep are less frequent. More common is the night I crave an isolation I know I will despise. The brief walls of my closet lined with unread books. Every year I face them and promise they will be no more. I calculate how many books I would need to read per week for that to happen. I shut the door to my closet and lie in bed. I move on from the almost uncontrollable desire. I'm reminded by my love that whoever convinced me that time was precarious did not have my best interests at heart. That includes myself. I do not attempt to cease the day. I attempt to rest at night. I reject the call of music. I delete the playlist with the saddest Frank songs. I go to sleep without reading. So, like I said, I just felt like that was super relatable. The idea of being so obsessed with an artist or an album that you want to banish it. I mean, I feel like I've felt that like the love is almost too strong and you want to just never even listen to it again. And then the idea of calculating like how long it would take you to read all the books you own and then deciding not even to read anything at all before bed is like, been there. And again, there's so much desire, so much longing, so many want type verbs in this collection, but again, it's like the what is it, the Buddhist tradition says that desire is like the root of suffering, and I think that is largely true, but again, reading about someone else's desire, not quite so painful. Okay, here's another brief passage I wanted to read. But I sometimes wish the night was a field of budding roses, stretching from the Nile to the Hudson, wide enough to get lost in, small enough to never need to call my mama, like, "Mama, come get me. There are no windows in this house." So that was the end of a poem, sticking the landing. As usual, there were so many great final moments and final lines in this collection. It's open-ended, right? There are no windows in this house. It's evocative, but kind of leaves some things up to the imagination, but again, not in a confusing way. I also found this collection to be painfully honest. It felt so real and true to me. Parts of it deal with abuse in a way that I felt was, frankly, like really brave. And here's a passage I want to read on that topic. Our house has always been a museum of rage. I can pick any corner to prove it. Sometimes I want to forget, and sometimes I want to cry over a memory I never asked to have. Again, why do I have a poetry YouTube channel? All I know how to do is read excerpts and make faces at you about them. So, okay, I wanted to include some actually articulate thoughts on this collection. So I went to Hazem's website and there were some reviews of the book over there. This one is from Sarah Elkamel, author of Field of No Justice, and she wrote, quote, "Hazem Fahmy is a poet of preservation. If a museum is a house that cares for and displays objects and vignettes of the past, then Waiting for Frank Ocean in Cairo is a museum. In it is a keen and compelling exhibition of haunting artifacts and moments from the speaker's childhood in Egypt, evidence of a resistance to erasure and forgetting even through migration to America." Quote from the collection, "I am still learning to forget the house I learned to cook in, the house I stopped speaking of love in," Fahmy writes. Part family album, part map across the geographies that shaped his life, from Cairo's many highways to LA, Houston, and the Hudson. The book asserts the voice of a poet concerned at once with the minutely domestic and the transnational. In refreshingly honest, unadorned lyric, the poems on display here bring us into the world of a boy who wants nothing more than to dance to the backdrop of wreckage and newness in a city, quote, "in love with its fences." So that person did a much better job than me. And finally, I just wanted to say, I want to give some context. I want to be transparent about this because I did this review. This was a solicited review. And I want to say thank you to Half Mystic for giving me a free advanced PDF of the book. And I also just want to say real quickly that I've actually gotten a lot of these requests over the years people emailing me and asking me to make a video about their book of poetry, and as a rule, I pretty much always say, I have never done it before. This is the first time I've ever said yes. And the reason I've never said yes before is because most of the people reaching out to me, or all of them, are, up until now, people I don't know. I don't know them, I don't know their work, and I don't know the publisher. Often they're self-published books, which is perfectly fine. I just say that to say, like, I don't know anything about, like, I'm not familiar with the publisher or the press or the person or their work. And when you're reaching out for a review, it's usually because you want someone to you know, talk up the book, get conversation started, hopefully sell the thing. And so, you know, my fear when people ask for reviews is like, what if I don't like it? And then I don't want to lie to my audience to say that it was amazing. So the reason I said yes to this is because Half Mystic Press puts out really good books. I've read, before this one, 2 others. I have one here. I read Knock by Melissa Atkinson Mercer. I also read Say Mother Say Hand. I forget who that's by. I lent it to a friend of mine because it was so good. So I read those 2 books, and I just knew, like, this press puts out high quality books that even if it wasn't going to be to my like exact taste, because poetry is so particular and subjective, I knew that like I would have plenty of good things to say about it. So I want to be transparent that this was solicited, but also honest. Like, I'm not just saying it was good. I specifically would not do that, and that's why I, as a rule, don't really do reviews unless I like know the poet and their work, or the press and I know their work. Like, I need to have some connection that I know that like I'm gonna be able to rave about it because I want to. I want to help people sell their books. Like, it is the hardest thing. It is so hard to promote your work. It's much easier to talk up other people's work. And unfortunately, I think especially in the modern publishing landscape, and especially for poets, I mean, you really just have to kind of promote your own book. Like, no one's really going to do it for you. So I was really happy to be able to, like, hopefully, I would love if a handful of you even, like, go out and buy this, because it's hard to sell books. So again, thank you to Topaz and the Half Mystic team and Hazem for writing an amazing book and letting me read it and tell people about it. So again, the link to purchase the book or look at, you know, Half Mystic's other books will be in the description box below, along with a link to my Patreon, which you're always welcome to join.